Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a Dragoncraft deck. So this one seems to focus a lot on just straight up aggression. There are definitely some decent synergies for that now with, of course, Gadget Mermaid and things like that really giving you some edge. Steel Claw, really good as well, getting that extra damage in. Those sort of cards do nicely. So not a bad deck overall. It's also reasonably cheap, only running 6 legendaries, so definitely erring on the cheaper side as a deck. So hopefully guys, sorry, 9, so I'll correct myself right now, 9 legendaries. I forgot to count Omen of Disdain. I was mainly just counting the other 2, but to be fair, if you're going to play Dragon, you should have triple Omen of Disdain by now, but hopefully guys, we'll be able to enjoy this, so we'll get right into it and check it out. So first up, we're going to be playing against Rune. Another deck that seems to be going up the ladder a little bit, focusing on obviously countering Blood and Haven. Rune actually is one of the few crafts that can actually counter really heavily. Its Earth Rune Burn variants seem to do an amazing job of countering. But handling any other deck, Rune can struggle a little bit, so we should be reasonably favored for this match. So I got a pretty decent chance with the Goblin and the Hoverboard Mercenary going into the low drops early. Obviously with an aggro deck, it's always a good thing. We've actually got a fairly decent chance at just wiping the board too. Using, of course, Rending. And just drawing a card. I mean, it does leave everything at a 1-1, but that shouldn't be too big a deal against Rune currently. With the variations that people are running, they might clear 1 and maybe 2, and then that'd be it for the turn. So we get a nice turn just to set up our long game with that extra, of course, Dragon Handspur, while dealing just that little bit of damage in. Tetra, not a great thing to see. They're going to be able to wipe out at least 2 followers here. Ideally, of course, they're going to kill off the 2-3 and probably one of the better 1-1s. Instead, they went for the repair mode, which honestly does make sense. If you're going to go for anything, repair mode's definitely a good one. So now I have a decent chance with this. I probably should have considered going face with it for 3 damage, but getting the chance to just trade straight up and then deal 3 damage with my followers, I mean, that's pretty good too. I could have done a couple damage, I could have done 1 damage better and traded more, but I didn't think that was an optimal way to do it. So we do have to deal with this board now, and it's not going to be the best thing in the world. Ideally there, I probably should have just thrown the Omen to the board with an Evo and then just trade into it, but I actually wanted to go for a massive board using the Full Metal Dragoon, so cleaning up my board and then expanding definitely seemed like the right choice at the time. Plus, I can take advantage of the fact that next turn, Omen can Evo anyway, so it probably was just better to do it this way. Get a decent board and set up for next turn where I could potentially go for 5 damage or the Omen for a clear. Ooh, Technolord, definitely a rough one, although we did get an okay spread on it. So we do need now to get the damage in. We're only got 9 currently. We're just short, so luckily though that does set up Dragon's Handspur for next turn, and obviously our opponent gave up, so that wasn't even going to be necessary, but we did set up for a potential lethal. Next up, we are playing against Shadow. Seems like Shadow and Forest, along with Rune, are becoming more and more popular as things go along. I definitely haven't seen a lot of Dragon lately, but every other deck I've seen an absolute shit ton of, so no surprise there. To be honest, people are trying to experiment with counters, working on getting around Blood and stuff. Obviously, there are still prevalent Blood players and Haven players, but definitely I'm seeing an upturn of other variations on decks to try and counter. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It does mean the ladder is settling into a more varied situation than, of course, the initial first week or 2. So Certain of Disdain, not a great counter, but it does at least draw their attention, even if it was only for the Manifest Malice. Now I get a good chance with this Righteous Dragoon to at least get some board presence going. Especially since we already saw the Malice played. Warring Flame might have been a little early, to be honest. Probably not what I would have went for, especially since now I've got an ideal setup here with Full Metal Dragoon. I can actually go for a full board while wiping out their own board. Ideally, I probably should have went for Doting Dragon and then went for that. That way I could have went for a full board in that sense as well. And actually had a whelp. But this one actually isn't that bad. We did get a nice solid 2-2 board, which against Shadow is actually pretty optimal. So they are going to want a good trade here. And that was pretty decent. So I do have pretty much optimal face damage now. I could almost ignore the board completely and just straight up go face. Or we can go face with what we've got and then maybe just send the 2-1 into the 5, which honestly is the better play. Removing the bigger amount of damage, freeing up a board slot, filling it straight back up, and leaving them to deal with our entire board. Although another Cerberus was a really nice draw play there, getting it out, filling their board up, getting that extra ping damage, which of course will cripple us pretty hard here. Especially since they did get optimal pings with it as well. They got pretty much perfect. They couldn't have asked for much better. So I do have a 50-50 with this Omen here on taking out the Cerberus, which would of course be the ideal situation. So we didn't get the ideal situation, but I mean we did get that, so we managed to still go for the complete wipe. And if it wasn't for this Odin here, we would have had a lethal on board next turn if they didn't wipe it out. And they have put me in a position where I really just need to go for it now. I can manage to luckily take everything out here. I do need to retain the 2 damage on board though if I want to win next turn. So on the flip side, we are at least forcing them. Although these are not a good look for us. Not a good look at all. At least I can go for the 5 damage plus clear out the 4. So we're actually set to go for lethal next turn now. We just need to not see a ward or any healing go up. Or too much healing, to be honest. Any healing is fine, just not too much of it. Since we have Ruler of Skies in hand, and we have a pretty good chance of getting Gadget Mermaid, to be honest, with how much we're running. But Ruler of Skies is going to be perfect, taking them out and giving us a pretty nice lethal. So I did find this deck to actually be pretty okay. I was a little worried about how aggressive Dragon could be with what they were running currently, but this deck actually was quite solid. Running the single Poseidon does give you at least some late game viability and potentially early game wards, so it actually works quite well as just that, but you're mainly definitely focusing on pushing board space, pushing as much damage to face, and just dealing whatever you can where you can. If you get dragged into late game by something like Haven, you are screwed, but typically going up against something like Blood, this deck does okay. Going up against, of course, Shadow, Forest, any deck like that usually is fine. I have seen an upturn in Sword as well, but not as heavily, so that could be a potential one that this deck could do well against, but I haven't had enough testing to really say for sure. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find this deck list in the description below. Until next time guys, see ya.